Ladies and gentlemen, Soledad O'Brien and Barbara Boxer.
I'll put you in charge of my handbag. Thank you. Senator Boxer, I handed off my bag to that young lady.
Oh my God, I have never ever left my purse.
My whole life. Right next. She was very. We can keep an eye on her.
Whichever one
We can put it on
She might be too enthusiastic.
Okay, I know this is improper. Is this working?
Yeah.
But since we started with a joke about purses, do you know Paula Poundstone?
Yes.
You guys? So she was like a friend of mine, and she once came up to me and she said, I notice when you're on the Senate floor, you always have your purse over your shoulder. And I said, really? I never thought of it. She said, I guess you don't trust those guys. Good point. There's a reason. There you go.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
So I'm gonna start us off, if that's okay.
Okay, Teddy.
Sorry, I was getting the pen, but I needed the pen anyways. We're very, very fortunate to have Senator Barbara Boxer and the great Soledad O'Brien. By the way, we have. I know that you want to travel light, Soledad, but we have some swag bags, and I have to differentiate because there's a few things in there that the filmmakers get, and you're a producer, but we also included a T-shirt for you as well as for Brad, and when we have one for Barbara and Stuart.
Thank you.
Oh, and our famous beanies. So.
Okay, another comment. If I was a senator, I couldn't take the gifts. Now I can. Can't be bought off. Thank you so much, Teddy.
Now, just a quick intro, and I'm sure there's a lot. I'm just going to try to encapsulate it, but of course, and we talked about this a little bit upstairs, but there's a little bit of a connection with the senator and Soledad because Soledad got a beginning of her career. She was at KRON, NBC in San Francisco, which of course, yeah, so.
And that's the number of viewers we have.
Yeah.
It's all 6 of you.
But she's covered, I'm sure you all recognize her now because she's covered many, many important stories over the years, whether it was JFK Jr.'s plane crash, in spite of the conspiracist film we had earlier, he did pass. Columbine, Katrina, many, many other things. She's worked for CNN, MSNBC, NBC, HBO with Brian Gumboldt, who I trained once up in Tahoe at that golfers tournament. Nice guy. A great investigative reporting. She's not just reading the news. This is a uber intelligent human being who graduated from Harvard College. I hope I didn't embarrass you with that.
Still paying it off. So
yeah.
Everyone should contribute $1. So.
But there's other humane things that she does. She has the Powerful Foundation, where she mentors women to help send them to college. So more of us should be doing that. And again, forgive me, I know she's received numerous awards, including the NAACP President's Award, a couple of Peabodys, I mean, that's amazing, and at least 2 national Emmys.
10.
10, okay, so, wow. And of course she has her production company, Starfish, and which helped produce this film that The Devil is Busy that screened here. And I believe Geeta and Crystalline, are you here? Well, at any rate, we had the producers, or excuse me, directors were participating. For Barbara Boxer, there's really not a lot to be said. There's plenty that we all know. You know, this is a fireball of a human being who has accomplished so much and has fought so hard for not just her district when she was 10 years a representative in Northern California, I believe, starting in 1982. And then after 10 years, she ran for Senate for 3 terms, which is four. Okay. And I do remember at one point, I think it was the second Bush term, 2004, she received almost 7 million votes in the state, which was the highest voter turnout in U.S. history outside of a presidential election. And now, before I let you two go to do your thing, Senator Boxer, would you mind signing a book that she wrote?
Oh, no.
So this book, and there's a little story behind it, see if you can find the page there. Turn it one. No, I think you keep going. Oh, wait.
To Teddy.
She signed it 20 years ago. And you wanted
He
this
knew
book.
it.
Of course I did. This is a setup because this will lead you to your discussion, at least in part. It was very difficult to get to the senator through all the filters. And I tried, I wrote to whatever the 20-year-old interns were. And so I said, I'm going to stand in line. I bought this book and I stood in line for 2.5 hours to get the signature. But I thought, well, I've got an in-person, connection here. And I told her I was working on a film in Romania about abortion, about Ceausescu as a case study, because at that point, at that period, Justice Roberts had been nominated and confirmed, and then Alito, and everyone was concerned. If you remember, it wasn't just 2022, it was a real hairy time then, so I thought it's important to do a case study. And I want to do an interview with her, but well, you didn't know because of the filters, but she did say, talk to my security guard, so that was as close as I got. So thank you anyway. So,
That's a bad story.
it's the truth though.
It's a terrible story.
Because
I never had a security guard.
No, the big
My
guy.
husband.
No. When you were doing those books, you were a senator. You had protection.
I don't remember.
Well, I do.
Well,
So
this is yours.
thank you. At any rate, please enjoy.
Thank you. I'm gonna grab my phone back from you so I can keep us on time.
This is already so much fun, isn't it?
I know, I love it.
Thank you so much.
So how's retirement going?
I never did retire. What happened was, I decided at a certain age that I would not run again for the United States Senate, having served 4 terms. And I left the year that Donald Trump ran against Hillary Clinton. Remember? And I left, and I was out of there. And it probably was a good thing, looking back, because imagine me and Trump. I don't think it would have worked very well, as someone who liked to get things done. So I decided I still wanted to make a positive impact. So for that first few years, I signed up with creative artists, and I was on a speaking tour, and I went all over the country to different states and talked about a woman's right to choose, talked about climate change, was on panels, did a lot of TV things, and then came COVID. So that really changed things. For example, I was teaching a class at USC. I loved it. I created this whole curriculum, and it was about demystifying politics and governance. Because people always go, it's so complicated, and I don't like that, because it's not. It's really not. It's about finding solutions, meeting in the middle, figuring it out, making progress, one foot in front of the other. So I had to do that online. It was hard for me. It was rough. The students said they liked it, but it's not the same. It's like if we were doing a Zoom thing and I was up there, it's not the same, right? So it kind of changed me. So then I decided I wanted to do charitable work, and how would I support that? I'd become a consultant. So I became a consultant, and I'm helping people in the healthcare space a lot. I had a client here. Is that Grace? Hi, Grace. Grace Garner. Here in Palm Springs, she is a terrific member of the council. I helped a group of mostly African American and Latino folks who in the 50s and 60s, the city of Palm Springs was involved essentially in running them out of town and burning down their homes. You might have read about a Section 14. So it was a reparations thing, but we never said reparations. That's not a good word to use. So restitution. Prove to us that you lost your home. And I was so proud of the city for helping us with that. So that was one of my wonderful clients. And I was never lobbied, Grace. I was in the background. I didn't lobby and I don't lobby. But I strategize. So I do that now. So then I earned some money, and now I can do more charitable things. And I love to do charity about kids. And my friend Terry Kedover, anyone here know her? Raise your hand. Yes, a lot of people know Terry. She found this thing called Do the Right Thing, and she founded it in Florida many, many, many years ago, and worked with the police chief there to honor kids who are doing the right thing, who are, even though they come from broken homes and they have hard times or they have a disability, they overcome. And I'm the vice chair of that, and I just love it. And then I came up with this idea for an essay contest in the Palm Springs Unified District, and we tell kids to write about something they've overcome. And I just will close with this. What's so emotional for us doing this project is we started it during COVID, and we thought people were going to write about getting over COVID. None of the kids wrote about that. They wrote about overcoming a situation where there was an alcoholic in the family, or somebody stories that just, you want to just cry your eyes out. And so we found out, we gave awards, Soledad, to the best writers, and we printed up their little stories. And it's just honoring children, okay? In closing, as I always said in the Senate, and people go, all right, it's time. In closing, when we help kids, we usually, when they do something bad, go to your room and you're this and you're that and you're grounded, and of course we have to do that. But how about giving more attention to them when they do something good? You know what I'm saying? And that's the theory behind my work. So that's what I'm doing in my retirement.
Before your retirement, you were very much involved in reproductive justice and reproductive freedom. Are you doing any of that work now?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Are you kidding? Yes. I mean, every place where there's an initiative about restoring rights for women, they call me and I help them strategize, and I try to raise funds, and we've been winning in all of these places. And to me, a woman's right to choose, that was an issue when I first ran for local government in the 70s, okay? And my opponent in my first race, and the only race I ever lost, distributed horrible materials against me in the churches, which really leads me to your film, what a horrible person I was, without going into detail. And instead of running away from the issue, I embraced it. And I said, what the heck does government have to do with a personal, private healthcare decision for half of our population? Keep your nose out of it. I respect you. If you would never want an abortion for yourself or your child or your grandchild, I would walk the plank for you. But if you come to another decision, I walk the plank for you too. That's why I believe so much in the freedoms that we had to fight so hard for, and where we are today. And the film that you produced, Soledad, moved me so much, because what you show in that film is there were religious people on both sides of this, okay? No one owns that. No one owns that.
People have the chance to see The Devil is Busy?
If you didn't see it, you need to try and get it. Because basically the story is of a very religious woman who runs an abortion clinic in Atlanta. And every single day she opens up the clinic, she is met with these protesters who are shouting religious things at her, saying she's going to go to hell and she's a killer and a murderer. And she's very religious. And in her mind and in her heart, she's helping vulnerable people who need the help. And I was so moved and touched by it because it's something I've always felt. If you read the Old Testament, the New Testament, it tells you to reach your hand out to someone who's in trouble and don't judge them. And to me, this abortion issue is so tied up in so many places. It's about religious freedom. Wherever you come down on it is totally fine. But keep government out of certain issues. It isn't their business. These are difficult, hard decisions that a woman makes with her, you know, her family, her doctor, her God. It's up to her. She's going to decide this. And we should support her decision. And I thought Roe v. Wade was the right way to go. In the early stages, you pretty much can take care of this issue. In the later stages, you had to prove that a woman's health and life was at stake. And that was just, seemed to me, a fair compromise, got blown out of proportion. And now we are in so much trouble. And we need to fight. And I just want to say to the men who are here how important you are to us, as standing with us. It means everything. Thank you for that.
One of the things that I thought was most interesting about Tracy, who's the security guard who runs the clinic, is how religious she is. And we sort of opened with her very Southern black lady, you know, is on the phone with her pastor, and she can't be at church, so she has, you know, on speakerphone, she's talking to the pastor and having her morning prayer, which clearly is something she does every day. And it really made me think that often in the debate, and as much as this is a political, obviously, conversation, because you're a politician, I want to have more of a conversation around messaging and storytelling, because of course this is a film festival. It made me realize, like, it seems that one side of the argument is about God and faith, and then the other side kind of stays away from God and faith, right? It was a little bit surprising, in fact, when we see Tracy starting her morning very, very deeply religious. Later on in the film, she goes on to say how she believes God has put her on this earth to protect the women who come into the clinic. And that's not really a narrative you hear very often. Is that a mistake?
Well, I've never shied away from talking about my belief in God. And when they wanted to do a prayer in the school, amendment to the Constitution, they were going to put that in there. You got to pray in school every day in the Constitution. I stood up and I said, you know what? I went to public school in New York City. Anyone else? Nobody? Two people, 3 people, 4 people. I went to public school. I prayed every single day without a constitutional amendment. I said, God, don't let the teacher call on me. I do not have to. I never ever shied away because I'm a believer. And you know, and if you're a believer, then you have to respect other people's beliefs. And if you're a believer, then you believe everyone's a child of God. Whether you're black, you're white, you're brown, whatever you are, whether you're straight, you're gay, you're trans, you are a child of God. And we gotta take that back. I agree that we've been remiss in that point. And I just love this film, and again, if you haven't seen it, because it shows you how religion can lead you to look at this issue in a different way, and they both have to be respected. That's the whole point of choice. I don't know better than Soledad what to do if somebody in her family has an issue. I respect her enough to know they're going to figure it out. And they don't need Mitch McConnell or Donald Trump or J.D. Vance telling them what to do. The whole thing is absurd. What do they know about my family? So I think you're absolutely right to ask the question. I think Democrats have walked away from that whole issue, And I embrace it. I just feel that, you know, show me where God said you should force a 10-year-old girl to have a rapist child. Show me that in the Bible. It's not there.
You were giving a talk to law students, and you said something that was really interesting, and I think kind of resonated with me as a filmmaker. You said to them, don't say, what do I want to be? Say, what do I want to do? And if you go into it that way, you continued, you will accomplish great things. So in the context of this issue around abortion rights, I'm curious, how have you sort of leveraged that philosophy?
Well, the context of that is a lot of kids would come up to me wherever I was, you know, whether it was public school, high school, college, beyond, and say, how can I be a senator? You know, I want to be president. And I realized that was a shallow kind of thing. Because just looking at my own life, and we all have to look honestly at our life, do you think, being born all the way back then, I even thought about a political career, or wanted to be a senator, or be any, there wasn't even a chance in hell that it was even possible. It was barely possible in 1992 when we tripled our numbers in the Senate. They called it the Year of the Woman. We went from 2 to 6. Explain to me, how Year of the Woman is that? It was progress. So I realized when I talk to these students, male, female, whoever, don't think about what you want to be. Don't picture yourself in a certain way, a United States Senator behind the Oval, or think about what you want to do. What is important to you? Is it important that we save the planet? Is it important that we give people clean air, clean water? Is it important, you know, that we give people health care? Is it important that we have a peaceful world? Everyone here in this room, if I asked you to shout out your issue right now, I won't. But sometimes I do that. What's the most important issue? There'll be, you know, 40 different shout-outs. And that's a wonderful thing. And I'm sure, looking at many of you, you've dedicated your lives to certain things. It's no different for you than it was if you wanted to go into politics. You want to go in there for something that really touches your heart. 1 or 2 things that matter. And that is the way to be. Not, I want to be a senator, but I want to do this. And the best way I can do this is if I run for public office. So that was what I meant. Don't want to be something, want to do something.
In our doc, a couple of things really stuck out to me when we first started reviewing the video. One was just how complicated Tracy, our security guard, is, right? She's just a complex person. And I think often sort of the issue around abortion is this versus this, right? It's all very clean and clear, but in reality, it's quite complicated. And then the second thing we noticed was that the protesters are just this very loud noise all day. And one of the choices that our editors made was to continue, you know, normally, if you're doing a piece, right, you have sound full, you hear protesters, and then you drop it so you can continue on with your storytelling. And in this case, we let the noise, right, just constantly. There is just a loud noise behind everything, the entire film. And I always wonder if you think, I mean, I believe that documentaries can have an impact on how people feel about issues because you have the time to show the complications. But do you believe really, truly, have you seen over your career that documentaries and storytelling can move people and change minds?
I definitely do think, I mean, we're talking about the arts and what the arts can do. What music can do, what film can do, what songs can do, just listening to words can do. So absolutely, it's just, as a matter of fact, in my career, I wanted to do something. I got involved because I wanted to end the war in Vietnam. That's how I got started in all this thing, all those years ago. So I didn't start out running for office. I started out being a protester. And taking our little kids, we would march and, you know, yell and scream. And I want to do a little more, talk about noise. I made a lot of that noise. And then I was a reporter. And it was so interesting because I lived in Marin, and Hamilton Air Force Base was activated, and they were sending troops from there to Vietnam. And a story I pitched to my editor was going out there with the photographer and interviewing the young men. They were all men who were going over there. It was tough. And I, wrote that article, and I hoped it would change minds. So yes, writing can change minds. Books can change minds. And it's so important that whatever our talents are, we utilize those if we care deeply. And the constant noise of that film, it just shows you the unrelenting anger of the opposition to women's rights. The unrelenting anger and noise. And it's, I was telling Soledad, she remembered that she knew this. My first bill, when I got to the Senate, that I was the floor captain, I was in charge of moving the bill forward. I was asked to do that by Ted Kennedy. And Ted Kennedy was very strong for women's rights and for a woman's right to choose. And it went against his Catholic faith. It was very difficult. So looking back on it, I now know why he picked me. He said, "You just handle it. You handle it on the floor." So I said, "Oh, great." And then later I was, "Oh my God, I saved this guy from all the anger that was, thrown at me." But the bill was Protecting Clinic Entrances Act. That was the name of it. Protecting Clinic. And now, and it's still the law of the land, it says you cannot get close to someone who's entering for abortion services. I guess you can't stop the screaming, and that's why you get the screaming. But to me, it is a metaphor for the battle. It never stops, and the people against this are so dedicated to it and have no respect for the opposite view. It's a really tough battle.
Were you a reporter at the Pacific Sun around the time when Roe v. Wade passed? Is that?
Yeah, yes, that was 1973. I ran in 1972 for this local office when this opponent did all those bad things about me on Choice, and I lost by very close margin, and that's when I got hired to become a reporter, and I was loving it. And then I had a show on KGO radio, and if you know, that was in the middle of the night shift because I was the newest one. And the only people listening were truck drivers, pretty much, and people who had a hard time falling asleep. And
nursing mothers also. I have done some of those shows.
But it was really, or people who had a little bit too much to drink would call it out. And we talked about everything, and all those things were great. But then I wanted to be in the room where it happens, But yes, Roe v. Wade passed. And I mean, I have personal memories before Roe when I was in college where it was my very first job. It's going to surprise you what it was. In New York, I was a stockbroker. Can you even imagine this? And of course, all of my clients were widows and orphans. It was very hard. They didn't have a lot. And so I couldn't sleep at night. Well, oh my God, if I lose any money for these people. And in those years, was right before Roe. And one of my colleagues who I worked with there, she was wonderful. She confided in me that she'd become pregnant and she really wanted to have the child, but the guy said, threw $300 at her. Honestly, I remember $300 and said, "Go to Mexico. I don't want anything to do with it." And she asked me to go with her. I was married and I just couldn't do it. And I went to work. My husband was in law school. She went by herself, and she didn't come back, but she's okay, but she didn't come back for weeks, and when she came back, she was so pale, she went to back alley in Mexico, and she almost lost her life. She had a terrible infection. That's what these people are screaming about. They don't care. And so to me, when I got to the House and then the Senate, this issue has always been a passionate issue for me, and I've always felt Roe was a fair compromise, and it's just a battle. It's a constant battle. We have to win it.
what was the public narrative around abortion back then? Whether it was movies or TV shows around abortion, and how's that changed from
It's a
today?
good question. I can't remember that it even was discussed in movies or, was it really, right? See, you're too young, you don't
I
know.
don't know, 'cause
We don't think it, what, really people didn't talk about it. It was just, because of those years, if you had the money, you went to Mexico quietly and secretly, and if something, God forbid, happened to you, no one would talk about it because it was a crime. So a lot of women died. Frankly, thousands of women died. And on their tombstone, it never says, you know, what happened. It just says, here rests so-and-so. And so, honestly, it was very, very, you didn't talk about it much. And Roe was just an amazing decision. It changed all of it, but opinions hardened, and it's always been a battle. But I don't recall, honestly, didn't have movies, or didn't have, like your movie, no one would do that. Am I right? People here?
Yeah, they did an episode
Well,
on
there were
Maude.
Can you
protests.
speak out, tell me?
They did an episode on Maude in the 70s.
They did an
an episode on Maude, a
There,
movie with
that's
Natalie
helpful.
Wood. There was an after-school special on ABC a gazillion years ago. I mean, you know, I think the narrative was often like, she's gone away because, and no one would say. But I'm, you know, obviously over time that has truly changed. I guess what I'm always interested in is how you convince the public. Like, what is the conversation that you think should be happening? Because if you actually look at the percentages of people who support abortion rights, right, they overwhelmingly support abortion rights, and yet the legislation is moving the other direction. So what is the conversation in your mind as a person who's been working to support abortion rights that has to happen?
Well, the great news is in every single state where there's been a referendum, we've won in every single state, even in Florida, where they tried to change the, remember DeSantis tried to increase the threshold for a winning a ballot. So we've won it, so the messaging, I think, is fine. I think women saying this is a personal choice, stay out of it. We respect all sides, but let each person make that decision. I think it's working, and it's shown to be working. Here's the problem. It's still not working to the point where it becomes an issue in the presidential race. People say, oh, the price of eggs were much more important than that, much more important than voting rights, much more important than civil rights. Don't get me started. Human rights, pollution, Greenland. We could go on. We could go on forever. None of that hit home. And so that's the problem we face. When it is specifically on the ballot, people vote in the right way, but we do not yet have a way of making it so important that people will vote for that over something else,
What
like
has
the
to
price of
happen
eggs.
to make that happen? Right, exactly. You ask someone about the price of eggs, and that will get front page and top of the cable newscast coverage, and abortion rights, or even protests, or even referendums, frankly, will be somewhere near the bottom.
Well, the referendums are working, and that's a great thing. And that, as I said, I mean, just to reiterate, what I'm saying is, I don't have a pessimistic view about where the people come down on this issue. I do not have I have an optimistic view. But I don't think they've made the connection yet to the people who are running. They're willing to overlook that, and that's a problem. Because if you vote for someone who wants to do away with a woman's right to choose, they're gonna vote that way. They're not hiding it. And so the other side always, makes it a single issue. Our side never does. So until we can connect the dots, we're gonna be in a bit of a problem. But as I say, on the bright side, the issue itself, for example, if you just did a poll, do you think a woman should be able to make her own decision in the earlier stages of her pregnancy? I think 75% of the people in America would say yes, or they do say yes. that's good. So I hold hope, you know, with that. And we'll see what happens in this midterm election, because it could come up again in those races.
No, don't ask the question.
Well, hey, hang on, I haven't finished my moderated
Yeah,
part yet, but you
don't
can
yell
be
out
first question.
Don't yell out the questions, because we're
I
gonna bring,
love that question.
we're gonna bring it out though with the microphone after Soledad is done, okay, so.
Well, I mean, and I think it is a good question, because, and you sort of addressed it, right, which is, you're an optimist, and you say the 75% number, and I think, well, that number actually has risen year after year after year, right? As rights diminish more and more and more. So that makes me actually a little bit pessimistic. And so when you have a charismatic leader like Donald Trump, it seems like a lot of this rationality around what someone's going to do and what they say kind of goes out the window.
Charismatic leader may be the way to describe it.
Well, I mean, how about somebody, yeah, you actually,
I'm kidding.
I know, but you know what I'm saying. Maybe that sounds too, no, actually, I think it's
A
somebody,
cult leader, let's call it what it is.
somebody who appeals to a large swath of people. You can call it anything. Yes, would you like to come up and sit in my chair, sir, and do the rest of this interview?
Okay, well, so your question is, how do you deal with it when you have a, quote, charismatic leader who represents a lot of people who is anti-choice? How do you deal with it?
Right, when the polling says we want more choice,
Right,
but the
right.
actual leader, who's very clearly anti-choice,
Right.
gets a lot of support from the populace.
Right. Well, number one, he doesn't have majority support. Let's be real clear, no mandate, no, he doesn't even, maybe right now, he's the least popular president in history in terms of this time in his presidency. Now, the problem, of course, we have is he appointed a court. And the court has done away with Roe. That is very problematical. So we have to be very smart about how we do this. It means we have to protect the rights of our states. We have to keep the pill, legal. And if we don't, we're gonna have big, big problems with it. So yeah, we're in a situation. I'm not sugarcoating it. But as I say, the reason I'm optimistic, and I'll quote Nancy Pelosi here, who always quotes Abraham Lincoln, who said, public sentiment is everything. Public sentiment is everything. Absolutely, it's true. Now, we're gonna find out tomorrow what happens in the Wisconsin Supreme Court. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Raise your hand. Most of you, some of you don't. So for those of you who don't, Elon Musk has marched into, with or without his Tesla, into Wisconsin and laid down $30 million in behalf of a right-wing candidate against a moderate Democrat, liberal Democrat, for the Wisconsin Supreme Court, an extremely important race. And it's a swing state. And it's all about Musk. So when Nancy quotes Lincoln, who says, public sentiment is everything, watch that race. Because it is a referendum on Musk/Trump. And if the woman candidate wins, the Democrat wins in that, it's a huge signal. Also watch the two races in your great state of Florida, where Trump won in these two races like 35 points or more. We shouldn't even be in the running, or it shouldn't even be a conversation. The chances of these wins happening are minuscule, but if we just come in 5 points behind, 4 points, 6 points, it's a hint about what is coming. So I am just saying to you, we can sit and cry all we want if we're Democrats and we care about choice and everything else, and ponder and worry about him getting a third term and all his garbage that he's throwing out. Look over here. No, don't look over there. Look what happens Tuesday. Seriously. And if it is true that we come close in Florida in these races and we win in Wisconsin, you watch what's going to start to happen. The peeling off of Trump's, the love that the Congress had. The one thing they fear more than him is their constituency. And you can see what's happening in some of these areas. So, people want to know why I'm the eternal optimist. It's who I am. Because I've seen wars come, and people said they'll never end, and they finally did. It was painful. I've seen a lot of things happen. And then I saw Roe. I saw we'll never do health care, and we passed Obamacare. It's not perfect. 60 votes, we did it. So I've seen us do these things. It's hard. And I don't want to look back. People say, why did we lose? I thought we were going to win. I'm not going to talk about it that much. You know, people that stayed home. I heard my former colleague Chris Coons say today, we lost the couch. People stayed home. Can you imagine people who supported the Palestinian cause stayed home? And now they have this guy? You kidding me? Right? So we can look back. I don't want to look back. I'm saying we have to move forward. Now, having said all that, and hopefully winning you over on that, I have to tell you what my daughter told me the other day. You know, Nicole.
Of course.
She says, Mom, you have toxic positivity. I said, what the hell is that?
I love that. I think we should steal that. That's pretty good.
I said, did you make that up? She said, I did. I said, but this, because to me, it's the only way to move forward. Yeah, thank you. My sisters. Because doom and gloom, what do you get out of that? It is what it is. What happened, happened. We are in the brink of disaster every single day. We're in chaos. 25% tariffs. You know? They're going after people because they have tattoos. Now, if they belong to a gang and they have proof of that, get them out of the country, give them due process, kick them out, by all means. But you're going to come up to people because they led a protest and kick them out of this country? What? We are in a situation. And, you know, we just have to fight back. The fact that you're here gives me hope. I feel like, you know, you didn't mind hearing me talk. That's good, because you've heard me for a lot of years. And the fact that you're still interested and care, it means everything. But no one can stay on the couch. We can't lose the couch. Well, there's a joke about J.D. Vance and couch, but I'm not going to. Back to you, Soledad.
How do we then, or how do you really, politicians, motivate people who are choosing between the couch and going to vote? And you know, it's sad. I did a documentary that aired a couple of days before the election around Latinos, the Latino vote. Mm-hmm. And the number of people who said to me, you know, my family would never be deported, even though most people were in mixed status families, you know, because they're only going to deport criminals. And you're like, well, overstaying your visa. You know, there's a million lists of things that suddenly make you a criminal, right? And these people now will say, when we follow up with them, I had no idea. And so it seems that somehow the narrative failed to get them if they voted or if they decided not to. And I always think when it comes to reproductive rights, there's a lot of language, you know, pro-choice, pro-life, partial birth, you know, and we talk less, and maybe Democrats don't talk very much about the human experience. Is that a mistake? What's the strategy?
We talked about it. I told you my words I use. You know, it's up to the individual, and government should stay out of this. And if someone's religion tells them that they can't do this or they have to do that, I respect it. But just keep government out of it. That's all. Tough decisions. That's the way you talk. But in terms of how I talk to people who go, I can't vote. You're all alike, and you're all stupid, and you're all this, and you don't have any courage, and you're this and this. And I always say to people what's really in my heart. Nobody's perfect. Nobody. I mean, I told you what my daughter said to me. I'm talking, she goes, you're toxic. You know? And she does it with love. And my husband goes, I don't think I agree with you on it. Okay. Here's the deal. No one is perfect in life. No one is perfect in politics. The only one who is perfect, who has your views, is you. You're perfect for you. And I'm perfect for me. What does it mean? It means we have to take the best option we have. And you may not agree with someone 100% of the time, but I say if you agree with them 75% of the time, don't tell me everyone's alike, because the other dude you don't agree with 5% of the time. So it's really, nobody is going to be perfect, you know? Good Lord. I could tell you, you know, I made the most stupid mistakes in my life. Said something I regretted saying or whatever. But most of the people forgave me because I was honest about it. I said, you know, and that's important. I think people have to fess up to their, you know, let's take this latest thing. I'm sure this is not where you want to go. What's this? Signalgate.
We can go anywhere you want to go.
Signalgate. Let's take that. Unreal. Somebody sucked in, that's the word they use, this reporter. He got sucked into the call. No, there isn't anything like that. He got invited into the call. And if they had just said afterward, oh my God, this was bad, they didn't do that. And it's a perfect example of why they're suffering from this, because they won't apologize. That's scary on two levels. Are they still using this? They're, you know, most people think the reason they use the Signalgate is it disappears automatically in 10 days.
You can't FOIA it.
And you can't FOIA it, which means Freedom of Information Act doesn't apply. So you're allowed to do more in secret. Horrible. But again, I'm using it as an example to say, you know, you do want a candidate that's willing to say what he or she thinks. I don't think you have to agree with that person constantly, but you want them to be honest with you. And I think that's the key here. I don't know what question I was answering, sorry.
That was a good answer.
I got off on a tangent about Signalgate, but how can you avoid that?
In a lot of ways, I think what you're saying is about being very blunt and straightforward. And one of the things that we did when we did our documentary was to look for, there's actually not a lot of abortions in any reporting on abortion or even any documentaries on abortion. And our documentary has a woman having an abortion, which is a very, I mean, you could have probably less dramatic than if she were having a tooth pulled, I would say, since you sit through it. There was a lot of back and forth about whether or not that could air. A lot. I mean, and it's a documentary in an abortion clinic, so that seemed sometimes a little bit crazy to me, and I'm curious. I, like you, think the blunt, straightforward, it is what it is a valuable storytelling tool so that people don't start making up a drama around something that maybe others don't know about. Is that a mistake?
Well, I think what's so good about your doc, if I could say, it's hard for people to complain about it because you're showing it what is happening on the ground. And they love the screaming opposition, the other side. They want people out there screaming, murderer, how dare you do this, change your mind, what are you doing, da 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 da. So you show that in all of its noise and all of its power. And it's a very hard thing to keep hearing it. And yet you show a woman who's deeply religious helping women go through this. And so for me, it's a breakthrough in a way, because no one, and it really, it's fair to both sides. And even she talks about the conflict. So I think you should be most proud that what you've done is you've shown the truth. It's not one side. You're showing the people that are getting hysterical about it. And you're showing reality. So I just thought it was a breakthrough film to me. It was, because most of the films are not. They're either one-sided or they're showing one side or another, or something on TV is showing one side or the other. So I just thought it was very special. And again, if you haven't seen it, I want you to try to see it if you can.
My last question before
It'll move you. I really will.
My last question before I open it up to our audience to ask questions, so get ready, sir. This is your moment. About to come.
Not
In one
yet.
moment, not yet. One
Not
last
yet.
question.
She's got one more
Just
question.
warming you up. So when we're back here 10 years from now, where do you think we'll be?
Oh, God, I don't know where the hell I'll be, but anyways, that's an
Where
important
will we
point.
be legislatively across a
okay.
number of issues?
At my age, can we make it 5 years? It's a little,
Five
it's
to
a little
7.
easier, but 5 to 7 years. Look, I'm gonna be honest. Where we are on a host of issues, whether we're losing this planet or saving this planet, whether we have a right to vote or we don't, they're trying to pass something now for married women, we may not be able to vote because our name is different than on our birth certificate. I mean, don't ask, don't tell. That's what's going on here. A lot of where we are in 5 to 7, 10 years depends on this next election. Now, having said that, I never say that. That isn't, I know what I'm saying. If we do not take back the House, I don't think we will take back the Senate. It's just too big a job. But if we don't take back the House and they get more people there who follow along blindly with the orange guy, we are in a lot of trouble. So just saying to you, if you live in Palm Springs or Rancho Mirage where I live, we have to try again in our race to bring about change. It is absolutely essential, or we can lose it all. I mean it. So, the House, the House, the House. That's what I say.
Let's open it up to questions.
So, we'll start with you, but just respect the process. We'll watch we've got a microphone back there, we'll split the duties, but we'll start with you.
And
then
my
we'll-
general rule is there should be a question in your
Oh,
question.
yeah, that's, you ready? Okay.
I grew up under Nazi-occupied Holland. I feel right now the same way. This is a real scary situation. It said in the program you were going to talk about the state of society. And I want to know, like so many people know, what the fuck are we going to do?
Oh, okay. Don't hold back the next time. It's serious. It's a serious situation. I just said that. You know, Hitler got elected too, right? And passed all these things. And there's a lot of playbooks out there that Trump knows about. And he's throwing it all. That's why I say, let's not look over here. Let's look at what he's doing. So I would say this is what we have to do. Lawsuits, lawsuits, lawsuits. And there's over 100 lawsuits right now. He's knocking people out of Musk with Doge. Knocking people out of jobs, a third of whom are veterans. Veterans! That's a third of federal employees are veterans. So the top of the, and then anyone that was put in place because of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. All I can say is, did you look at that crowd that did Signalgate? Bring back DEI. Because if that's merit-based, we are in doo-doo. And that is a fact. So what's going on now is very serious and very dangerous. We can stop them in the courts. Let's see what happens with the Supremes, as I call them. That's critical. The courts, we can stop them in elections, which is critical. And that's all happening. And I would just say to all of you here, if you have an extra $10 in your pocket, I kid you not, when we get to the House races, pick out a candidate. I don't care where the candidate is. There'll be 30 that are going to be the ones that make the difference. If you can give each of them $10, wow, that'd be huge. And I know a lot of people have never done that because it's not tax deductible and it's not, you know, I don't want politics and, but guess what? There's no federal funding and we have to get behind our people. So I want you to think about that. But I agree with you. What we need to do is what we're doing. We need these town halls, right? We need to go in front of Musk's Tesla places and be very sweet about it, but tell them off. And we need these elections. And again, Tuesday, that's tomorrow. I hope we'll be lifted up by some of what happens.
We have a question back here.
Sell your Tesla. Okay. First of all, I want to thank you both so much. Activism is so important, and we lack it in this country, I think, in a lot of ways still, compared to where we were just a few years ago. Because I think people have gotten very complacent and are very willing to stay at home anyway. But I think COVID did some real damage there. Soledad, I'm a journalist. I love your work. I work for the NBC affiliate in Utah, and I'm also a filmmaker. We have a film here. But what I wanted to say, and this is something that I talk about a lot, as a journalist, I try to come down in the old middle, the one that was actually between the two parties. In that area, when I'm considering my vote, which it does swing to the left now, it used to swing slightly to the right, that vote was based on a platform that was fairly decently defined. However, if you look at the right, theirs is defined down to every single word that comes on every single weekend program that you all watch, right? It's always in lockstep. And I look at our party and I question why we cannot come up with it. Absolutely, you know, as you said, we're not all perfect, no one's going to be. The platform won't be perfect, but by God, we gotta stick to it. Like, so how do we get a platform that we can all get behind and actually do the hard work that we need to do? Because it's great to talk about this, we gotta go do the hard work next.
I guess it's to me. Let me say this, and thank you for changing a little bit and moving in the right direction, or I should say the other direction. I thank you for that. It shows a thinking person. And I know a lot of my friends, look, I got 1,000 pieces of legislation through in my years. Never did one without a Republican co-sponsor, because you had to do it in order to get through the Senate. You couldn't do it. So now there's no one to talk to over there. Maybe one person, maybe not. So it's really hard. But your question is, they are cohesive, right, in what they're doing. Well, I find that obnoxious, to be honest with you, but I think you're onto something truly. Because look, me, when I see a party that is so lockstep behind a would-be dictator, it scares the hell out of me. And I don't want to be part of that party. I want to be a party where people think for themselves. But I think your bigger message is the messaging. And there I agree. I think we're getting there. I think we're getting there, we're not quite there. Now you have to know we are a very big tent, which is a blessing and a curse. Trust me. You go from pretty far to the left to right of center. And I've been in those meetings and I see what that's about. And so it isn't the easiest thing. So I think the first thing is to turn that into a plus, is to tell voters, you know, the one thing about our party, who was the old guy in the olden days who said, I don't belong to an organized political party, I'm a Democrat?
Groucho.
No, no, help me, come on. He was a famous, I'll think of it later.
Will Rogers?
Thank you, Will Rogers, thank you. Who said that? Who said that? You're the star of the day.
Steve.
You're the star of the day. Will Rogers said, I don't belong to any political party, I'm a Democrat. Any organized party, I'm a Democrat. So I think we need to turn that into a plus. But what we have to say, despite our differences and nuanced differences, we fight for working families. That's what we're about. We fight for them, for their education, for their opportunity, for their retirement security, for their health care, for their ability to breathe clean air and drink clean water. You know, all the years that I was out there, the oil companies tried to beat me every time. And they'd come and they'd have their minions there. They'd say, you're an environmentalist and you're stopping development and you're stopping progress. And I go, you know, in all my years in office, no one ever came up to me and said, Barbara, the air's too clean and the water's too safe. It just never happened, folks. People want us to fight for them. So I think we have to turn the negativity of being big into a positive thing. It's not, you know, it's hard, but also say, despite that, this is what unites us. And on the social issues, we don't want big fat government in our privacy, in our lives. We just need to respect each other to make our own decisions. So I think we can find those 3 or 4 things, but your question is on point. I don't have the perfect answer, but I don't agree with Carville, who I think is great and I know very well, but he said, don't do anything, Democrats, just let them explode. You know, that doesn't work. You have to have that alternative voice out there.
At the same time, if I can follow up on your question, you know, the messaging is so strong that when I would go out and interview people, the rare political interviews I would do, they would complain about trans kids. These are people who'd never met a trans person in their life, who didn't have any high schoolers. You know, they didn't, their kids were grown generally, so they didn't have any, this was not an issue. And the emotional, they were wrought emotionally about trans kids. So you have this messaging that's coming across, right, about an issue that's not really an issue in their own lives, and yet it feels to them like it's an issue in their own lives. And I think that's a challenge, certainly for Democrats to fight against.
Well, let me take that on. It's typical scapegoating, what they're doing. You scapegoat, and you've seen scapegoating in your youth. You scapegoat the least powerful people. And you essentially are blaming them for everybody else's problems. And you other them. And they did it really well. And the way I would do it, and you know, Newsom's gotten a lot of attacks because he, I don't know, some of you might have seen what he said. I don't like the way he said it. But there is a way to tackle that issue. And it's, instead of just not talking about it. I do want to say something. Has anyone watched, we have one trans person in Congress, Sarah McBride. If you've seen her, yeah, she's coming here for a fundraiser, by the way, Grace, she's coming. So, I have a story to tell, I'm going to tell it, and then I'll tell you how I would handle the trans issue. So, about 15 years ago, I didn't understand the trans issue. I was confused. I didn't get it. What? I was very, very, very ignorant. And I didn't know how I felt about it, and I didn't even know how to talk about it. And I went to an event for the Equality California, which is this terrific LGBTQ group I love, and I was slated to speak. And I'm in the green room in this beautiful home, and I'm with a woman who says, I am the main speaker today, you know, I'm a transgender person. I said, I'm so glad to meet you. I need to talk to you. What I said to her, how come you made this decision? And in the most articulate way, she looked at me and she said, it's hard to explain it, but I was trapped in a male body and I knew that wasn't who I was, and I was getting sick over it, and I couldn't live like that. And she went on very beautifully, very simply, and just like that, I was turned around. And fast forward, and I changed on that minute. So fast forward, 2 weeks ago, I get a call, pops up on my phone, Sarah McBride. So I pick it up and I said, oh, Congresswoman, I'm so proud of the way you're handling things. You know what they're doing to her. They're saying, if she gets up to say, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized, say, the gentleman from Delaware. cruel. She can't use the bathroom. And I can tell you right now, if she has to go back to her office, that is an unhealthy circumstance. It's a huge, huge walk from the Capitol back to your office. And I said, I'm so glad you called. And that's when she told me John Monahan's having an event for her, blah, blah, blah. I said, I want to be a co-chair. And I said, I told her the story. I said, you know, I didn't get this. And it's like it used to be with gay people. When they came out of the closet, people said, oh yeah, okay, fine. And I tell her the story, and she said, that was at the Johnny Mercer house, the old Johnny Mercer. I said, yeah. She said, that was me. She said, that was me. And I teared up. And she said, can I tell that story? I said, you own it, tell it. Because it was you. And she was really young then. And the HRC, Human Rights Campaign, had her going around the country. So, telling you that story, I think one of the things we have to demystify something around this, that's above my pay grade, it's societal. I don't know exactly how to do it, but they're doing it with some TV shows, but things that just make it less mysterious and odd. And here's the final thing. The thing is sports. And I read an article written by a trans person who said, let's not make the issue sports, because there are issues there. You know, there's hormonal differences, there's other differences in people's, you know, arm span or leg span or whatever span. So I think the way to handle it is to basically say this. Every young person deserves a right to be able to play in sports. That should be something we all agree with. It shouldn't be taken away from everyone. But why don't we leave it up to whoever is sponsoring the tournament to decide the rules? Because, you know, if you're in a boxing match, there's the heavyweight, there's the middleweight, there's the little people like me, weight. There's got to be a way to figure it out and let everybody partake in it. But there's got to be a way to figure it out, because I think you're right. I think it is a tough issue. People go, oh my God, if it's my daughter and she's losing a race and all of it. So the person who was trans said, don't fall on our sword on this. Let's figure out another way. So I hope I didn't go on too long, but I think you're right to bring it up, because some people say one of the reasons we lost the election was that issue. That's crazy stuff, you know?
Do we have time for one more question?
Yes, I have a question. Let me set it up. Several years ago, they were on the news. There was an interviewer interviewing people in line to see a Trump rally, and he asked the question, do you like the Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act better? And he said, oh, the Affordable Care Act is so much better. My question is, in our country, are we having a lack of education, a poor educational system? People can't think common sense. They don't want to research their own knowledge. What's going on in our country that they're so adamant and love Trump? What's with all that?
I've done so many interviews like that where I would ask people, you know, do you think they should get rid of Obamacare, and how about the ACA? And, you know, we would definitely keep the ACA, but we've got to kill Obamacare. And so I don't think it's an educational system. I mean, obviously we don't teach civics anymore, so I think that's not a good thing. But that's not high school education, right? That is the media failing to give context and good reportage to stories, right? That is the media just failing you. And so it's one of my biggest disappointments about the career I'm in, is it's really challenging to say things, you know, I mean, I finally, after much screaming, got people to stop saying racially tinged. I will take full credit for that. I killed that myself. But, you know, the New York Times used to say something was and you're like, what is racially tinged mean? That's not even a thing. And until you go back over and over and say, like, it's not a thing. It is either racist or it's not racist, but it's not racially tinged. I think it's just the media walking very carefully and not really wanting to take a position and clarify those things. I mean, my philosophy has always been, if people don't understand something, then the person teaching them that has failed, right? You can't blame the people for not understanding it. You have to blame the people responsible for educating them around the issues that should matter to them. So I think that the news media is really, we've done a bad job.
Soledad, I know
I have to add something.
yeah.
I agree 100% with that. I would also want to make sure everyone here knows it's the same thing, the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare. Because a lot of people don't know, for all the reasons Soledad said, but the history of that is the Republicans called it Obamacare in order to put a negativity to it. And Barack finally said, fine, it's Obamacare, I'm thrilled, this is great. But it backfired on us because of all of that. So it's just crazy. Look, it's now or never. This is my closing point. We are at a moment. We are every single thing that we've all fought for in our own way, whether we just held our opinion and shared it with our families, or actually were more active, and whatever side you're on, which I think I know what most of you are on, or you wouldn't be here, or you'd have walked out on me a long time ago. We are at that moment where we need to be wise and smart and not turn away. And Barack Obama said the greatest thing when he knew that he couldn't run a third term. Hello, Trump, you cannot run a third term. Barack Obama, when he knew he couldn't run a third term and he knew he was retiring, he said, I'm about to take on the greatest title in American history, citizen. And I loved when he said that, because there I was in the situation of being in a powerful position and wanted to still feel good and be able to walk away and be a citizen and still do this and still talk and still help and still make a difference. And I think a lot of people have to now take that citizen title, every one of you here. You can talk to people I can't talk to, and vice versa. So we each have to do our own job, because this is a moment. This country has given us everything, because the people who came before me respected everyone, took us in, took my family, and I'm a first-generation American on my mother's side. My mother never graduated from high school. I went to public school from kindergarten all the way through college, and when my tuition at Brooklyn College went to $30 in a semester, my dad said, honey, you're getting very expensive. This is what this country gives us. We cannot lose it. We must not lose it. So I love that you came out today, and Teddy, thank you for inviting me in. I have loved Soledad from afar for so long. I've never forgiven her for leaving CNN. But I'm so glad she's making these wonderful movies, and it's been an honor, really.
It was a pleasure to interview you. Thank you. Thank you, guys.